Chris Taylor, Executive Director of the Arizona Church Security Network, and today we're going to continue our series of why we need church safety and security ministries in our houses of worship. Today, our focus is going to be on disturbances and protests that may take place at our houses of worship. There are a wide variety of disturbances and protests that may take place, and many different reasons for those disturbances and protests. As we look at disturbances and protests, what we know is since the overturning of Roe versus Wade, June 24th of 2022, we have seen an increase in both protests and disturbances at our houses of worship. What we want you to do is make certain that your safety and security ministry and your church leadership have an understanding of how to respond when there is a disturbance or protest at your house of worship. So as we look at protests at our houses of worship, one of the things that we want you to do is not just train your paid staff and your safety and security ministry. When it comes to protests and disturbances, we encourage you to include your ushers, your greeters, all of your first impressions volunteers in that training, because it's important that everybody be able to act in a unified manner towards that potential protest or protesters. So we really encourage training because we know training is what's going to make the difference in these types of events. As we look at the continued social unrest, we know that we also are going to have disturbances as a result of other causes that people are passionate about or that they may misconstrue our beliefs about. So we want you to be prepared and equipped. So as we look at these, how do we deal with disruptive behaviors? And one of the things that we want you to do is understand that part of what protesters and those causing disturbances want is to catch us and to get us excited, to get us angry, to get us to emotionally respond to their protest or their disturbance. And so one of the things that we need to do is make sure that we're staying calm, that we're staying professional, we're using good verbal de-escalation skills, and that we're not rising to the level of their behavior or giving them a negative emotional response, which is what they're desiring. One of the groups that we're seeing more and more involved in our houses of worship is going to be those that are considered First Amendment auditors. And what the First Amendment auditors do is they arrive to the public property outside of your house of worship, like the sidewalk or the easement that the city has the rights to. And they will be there trying to get a rise, an emotional response from your congregants and from your team. There's one individual that we've seen in Arizona who will stand on the sidewalk outside of churches, outside of synagogues, and he'll yell things like Allah Akbar. And he's trying to get the attention and to get an emotional response from the congregants, from the others attending that house of worship. And so we want you to be aware of these so that you know how you're going to respond to an incident in advance. So when we look at our houses of worship and we look at disturbances and protests, it's important that you have plans in place and that everybody that may participate in that plan has training, including verbal de-escalation and response to crisis needs within your house of worship. So we want to make certain that we're prepared in the event one of these types of disturbances occurs at our church. Join us next time as we continue to talk about different types of incidents our churches may be involved in.